An error occurred.
You're allowed. I think we might have tried to go live at the same time.
Oh, okay. That's why the error occurred. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Monday Tom and Julia and Phil show. You don't think Phil's here, but Phil is here, the man behind the curtains, as I said the last time. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you're all enjoying life and staying safe. Where are you tuning in from? We have Maurizio and Mark, from Southern California, and Ed. Ed, you're number one. You're the first one in this week, Ed. Congratulations. You get a prize. The prize is, nice going, Ed. There's your prize. And Anthony and Ed and Chris and Larry and Bilou from Montreal, Regina from Missouri, Jeff from Connecticut, David from British Columbia, Greg from Washington, wow, David from Connecticut, and my neighbor Ed from Saratoga Springs. I'm not too far from there. Tulsa's in the house. Illinois, Calgary, of course. We always have Calgary. Northern California. Bilou corrected my pronunciation of his or her first name. Well, everybody, it looks like we're getting to a full house here. The names are popping up, and I want to welcome you to another Fly Tying Monday. And today we're going to tie a streamer. It's a good streamer anywhere. It's a good streamer in smaller sizes. It's a really good streamer during the winter for kind of jigging or bottom bouncing. It's called the GD Sculpin snack. And the GD stands for George Daniel, not something else, by the way. And George uses this streamer a lot, both with a conventional fly line, and he also used it with a Euro rod. And George really likes to kind of jig and bottom bounce his streamers using his Euro nymphing rod during the wintertime. And so it's a small streamer, fairly heavily weighted, so it dives down between the rocks, and you can hold it and jig it with a long, flexible Euro nymphing rod. So it's great for that. It's also great for just plain old streamer stripping. I think it would make a pretty darn good large stonefly imitation, so you can fish it dead drift. George calls it a sculpin. I think it's also a pretty good approximation of a crayfish swimming through the water. So imitates a lot of those larger food forms that trout are likely to take. And you can fish it any old way you want. Dead drift, fast strip, slow strip, across stream, upstream, downstream. And it'll work anywhere. It'll work anywhere where trout swim. It would probably also work really well in South America because it looks something like the pancora, the native freshwater crab that lives in South American rivers. So that's the story. And you see the recipe there in the comments. Thank you very much, Philip. And do we have any questions about the fly or anything before I get started? No, we have Brussels in the house. Raymond from Brussels. Wow. That's pretty. I don't think we've had anyone from Brussels on Facebook Live. So that's very cool. All right. So if there are no questions, I'm going to start this sucker. And this is what the completed fly looks like. And then here's a little close-up of the head. So I'm going to try a little bit different, couple of different camera angles today, hopefully so I can show you some of the wider things. This is going to be especially helpful when I'm doing dubbing, and not dubbing here, but winding the chenille and measuring the marabou. I think will be easier to show you on this wider view, and then we can come in and take a close-up look on that. So these materials available at Orvis. There's a material shortage going on. Yes, Steve, I ordered all the materials from Orvis for this fly, so as far as I know, they are available from Orvis. But yeah, I imagine some of you are having trouble getting materials because fly tying is really caught on and become extremely popular. And, people can only plan so far in advance, and chickens only grow so fast. And so, a lot of the materials that we're using are may become in short supply, but I don't foresee any major long-term shortages for any materials. All right, so when are you going to have another tie off with Tim? Julia, when's that going to be? In 2 weeks from today or next week?
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today, we're going to tie the La Fontaine.
It'll be a week from today.
A week from today. Oh boy, I better get going practicing. A week from today, we're going to be tying the La Fontaine sparkle pupa emerger, sparkle caddis, kind of a sort of dry, sort of in the film fly, but for emerging caddis. I forgot what Gary LaFontaine called it exactly. Sparkle pupa, and not the deep sparkle pupa, but the emerger version. Your recipe in the Orvis fly tying book shows wire wraps. Will you be using wire? Yes, Ed, but don't hold me to something I've done before. I change my mind about how to do these things frequently, sometimes in the same week. So just because I tied it one way, I didn't tie this fly in the Orvis fly tying book. I tied a Woolly Bugger. Yes, I'm going to use some wire wraps in this. Okay. So anyway, yeah, and Mike, an emerger tie. I think you might have been the one that asked for an emerger. So we listened to you. All right. So let's start. If there are no other questions, and I'm going to go over to the fly tying vise. So Julia, please yell out any questions if we have any. I'm from Belgium. Is not problem for all. Take plastic for more fly. If not possible, take natural products. Danny, not quite sure what you're saying. But
I think that Danny's asking, like, is it an issue if there's a lot of plastic within the fly, or I think that's what he's asking, like in terms of material. Oh.
Well, you can, sometimes we use plastic, sometimes we use natural materials, and there's downsides to both. And in natural materials, somebody has to kill something. And when we use plastic, which is not great, but sometimes there's no substitute. Recycled paper doesn't make very good flies. So it makes it difficult. But we don't use a great amount. So hopefully that's, and if you don't lose your flies, they will last for years. Brandon, I really can't answer your fly recommendations. I would ask someone down in Louisiana, or ask a guide that you're going with for fly recommendations. They'd know a lot better than me. All right, so let's start tying. So I'm going to take my completed fly out of the vise, and I'm going to take a size 8 or no, this is a size 10 actually. And I like this fly in smaller sizes because it's just a good fly to use in smaller sizes. Sculpins aren't that big around here, and I like it in smaller size. I like to have some small streamers in my box, and this is a good one. And it has a fair amount of weight in it, so it sinks really well. And then I'm going to take a tungsten cone head. This happens to be a size small. You could use a brass, plain brass. You don't have to use tungsten, but if I'm tying a weighted streamer, I like to cram as much weight as I can onto the fly. So I'm using tungsten. And these beads are funny. They're sometimes difficult to get over different size hooks. And honestly, if you're going to tie more than one size, if I were you, I would get all three sizes, small, medium, and large cones, because I can never predict which cone is going to fit over which hook. It's very, very difficult to determine until you actually do it. And you know, a lot of the hooks have different bends. But I know this bead is going to fit well on this hook. So there's the bead, and I'm going to put it on my hook. I'm just going to go through the end there, and it'll get to about here, and then it won't go over. And the cones always kind of pop. And what that pop is, when you put it on, hard to do here. There. What that pop does is it takes the barb off your hook. So you debarb the hook, and it just leaves a little bit of a micro barb. So that's perfect. Now I've got a barbless, mostly barbless hook, just a tiny little micro barb left. And I'm going to put that in the vise, like so. Then we'll go to the other camera so you can see better. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this bead back a little bit. And I'm going to take some super glue, or in this case, it's Fly Tire Z-Ment, which is super glue. And I'm going to dab it on here. This is not essential, and you could use head cement for this. You cannot use UV cure epoxy here because this is going to get buried, and you wouldn't be able to get your light in there. And then I'm going to slide that bead up, and it's not going to stick yet. Then I'm going to take my, and I'll go to the other camera. I'm going to take my non-toxic wire, and I'm going to start about 3/4 of the way back and wind up to the bead, up to the cone. You don't have to go all the way, and then hopefully you can break it clean. If not, you can cut it off. That broke pretty clean. And I'll make sure that my bead is up against the eye. And then I'm going to just slide this wire up into there. And I'm going to hold the bead at the same time. And then make sure that that cone is aligned properly before that glue sets. You want that thing to be nice and straight. So now I've got two kinds of weight in there, and if I've got a little tag end of that wire, I can just smooth it out with my fingernail. Okay? So there we go. Any questions to this point?
Yes. So there was some clarification around what Danny was asking, and I think he was just asking that if there is a natural material substitute for the rubber legs on the pattern.
Oh, a natural. Yeah, you could use you could use some pheasant fibers, some pheasant tail fibers, or you could use a couple other thin bunches of marabou, thin bunches of brown marabou. But you know, unfortunately there isn't a real supernatural substitute for the silicone legs. But yeah, or you could just wind a soft hen saddle hackle on there. But it's not going to look just like rubber legs. Okay, so now I'm going to start my thread, and I'm using 6/0 brown thread. You could use 8/0. 3/0 would be a little too heavy, but you could use 8/0 if you wanted. And I'm going to start my thread right behind that wire. And that'll keep the wire in place, a little bump there. And then I'll wind up on the wire just to make sure that it doesn't slip later on. And then I'm going to wind all the way back to the bend of the hook, right where the bend starts to fall over. Right about there. Maybe one more turn. Right there. Okay. Next, I'm going to take some tan marabou. And this fly, since you're going to put 2 bunches of marabou into it, it's a good place to use those skinnier marabou fibers or feathers that you don't want to use on one fly, or you might have to use 2 feathers sometimes because there's not enough. So pick a kind of a skinny, the skinnier, sparser piece of marabou, because you're going to have 2 layers of marabou, so you don't need to use your best marabou on this fly. And so there's my kind of skinny marabou feather. And then I'm going to wet the marabou. I put it in my mouth, but that grosses you out. You can dip your fingers in a bowl of water. And this makes the marabou a lot easier to handle. Now I'm going to measure the marabou against the hook. And I like this tail to be about a shank length. So it's not exact. You can make it longer and you can make it a little shorter, but I like them about the same length. And then I'm going to switch hands. And then I'm going to attach that to the top of the hook with about 3 tight turns.
Hey, Tom, just to try, I think the recipe I posted says an 8, but are you tying this on a 10? It's not.
I'm tying it on a 10, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I didn't have the right beads for an 8. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this marabou even with the end of the wire. So I'm going to put my scissors right up against the wire and then cut it right there. And then what I like to do to get this stuff in place is I like to kind of spiral it forward first and kind of work your fingers along there so that you bind it down. And then, of course, you stopped right even with the wire, so you got a nice underbody there. And then I'm going to go back to the tail, and here I will bind that down more. And I'm going to end up exactly where I started. All right. Now, I'm going to take my brown marabou and again, look for another kind of skinny piece. Doesn't have to be skinny, but just it's a good place to use the stuff that maybe isn't as good for another fly. And you can see that's kind of a skinny piece as marabou goes. And I'm going to wet that again. This makes it so much easier to work with. And this will fluff up later. And then I'm going to lay this right on top of the light colored marabou. It can be a little bit longer or the same length as the light colored stuff. And this time, I'm going to take 3 turns. Put your finger on the far side to make sure that marabou stays on top of the other bunch. And this time, I'm going to cut my marabou. I get my hand in here, even with the cone. And this is going to give you a nice evenly, not tapered body, but it's going to be the same diameter all the way through, which is what you want on this fly. You don't want much of a taper on this fly. So I'm going to kind of spiral forward till I get to the cone. And then I'm going to come back, little tighter turns, more even turns. Again, right to the spot where I started. Now I'm going to take a piece of chenille, and this is not, I don't even know what kind of chenille this is, but George uses the Orvis Woolly Bugger chenille, and I think it's on back order in brown. But this is very similar. It's a little more variegated, and it has a little, you can see there's a little bit of a sparkle, little black sparkle in that chenille, and I kind of like this for this body. So I'm going to take a piece of that, about, oh, how long is it going to be? Maybe 6 inches long. You could cut a longer piece, or even you could cut a shorter piece. I usually like to cut enough for 2 flies, which is about 6 inches, 6-7 inches. And I'm just going to cut that off the card. And then I'm going to take that chenille and take my fingernails and expose the thread cores. There's usually two or 3 thread cores inside that chenille. It just makes tying it in easier. And then I'm just gonna tie those cores in so that the chenille starts right in front of the tail. Bind it down really well, and then come forward all the way to the cone. And adjust that hook. Then I'm going to take my chenille, and I sometimes like to twist my chenille a little bit. It seems to make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to twist this chenille a few times. Just makes it look a little better when you wind it. And then start winding over the top, and take your first turn right up against that tail and hold the tail in place. That's going to keep that marabou from fouling around your hook shank if you make sure that you put that body right up against there. And then just wind it hand over hand, even turns, just barely touching turns until you get to the cone. And don't be afraid of building up a little bulk here. So maybe take 1 or 2 extra turns up there, because when you put the rubber legs in, it makes it easier. And then tie it off with just 2 or 3 turns.
Tom, someone's asking, could you do a dubbing body instead?
Of course you could do a dubbing body. Yep, you sure could. You absolutely could do a dubbing body. You could do a yarn body. You could use all kinds of materials for the body. But then it wouldn't be a GG Sculpin snack, would it? Because that's what the pattern calls for. All right, now I'm going to take a couple more turns just to make sure that chenille is secure. And I'm going to take some rubber legs or substitute, if you can find one. This is silly legs, and I really like this. It's thin enough so that it wiggles in the water even when your legs are fairly short, and it has little speckles in it for some sparkle. And I'm just going to take one complete strand of that stuff. So there's my complete strand. Whoops. And I'm going to fold it in half and cut it at the midpoint. This way I can get all 4 legs out of one piece of rubber. So I'm going to cut it. Now I've got 2 pieces. And I am going to, actually I'm going to go back to the other camera. I'm going to fold this leg around and try to get it in the middle point around the thread, like so. You see that folded there? And then I'm going to draw it up right to the side of the fly and take a couple turns backward to put those legs in place. And the legs on this, hackle, whatever, should go to about the middle of the tail. So I'm just going to even these off with my scissors. So now I've got my 2 legs on this side. And then I'm going to turn, I like to turn my vise on the side a little bit. It's not going to show. I'll do it without turning the vise on the side. Or maybe I can do it with the other camera. Let's see. Let's see how it looks here.
Okay, a couple questions, Tom.
Okay.
Deborah's asking, any thoughts on the colors of chenille you would choose?
No, I think the world is your oyster there, Deborah. I think that you should look at the crayfish and the sculpins in your area and then fish an entirely different color. No, I think you could tie this in lots of colors, as with most fly patterns. Yeah, I think you could come up with a lot of different color combinations.
And Mac was there, and the folks in the comments have been asking a little bit about marabou, which have been answered. But I don't actually know this. What part of the turkey body does marabou come from? Marabou
comes from a domestic turkey's armpit.
Okay.
Under the wing. It's an underwing feather. It's a downy underwing feather from a domestic turkey, or a wild turkey for that matter. They have marabou too. Most birds have marabou, what we'd call marabou, if they're big enough. Most birds have these long downy feathers under their wings, where the wings set into the body, right at the joint where the wings set in the body. But turkeys are a bird that has marabou that's big enough so that we can tie these bigger flies with. So yeah, it comes from the domestic poultry industry. When they slaughter the turkeys, they save the marabou and then send it out in bulk, and it gets dyed different colors. But the domestic turkeys are white. Okay.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions.
All right.
Taper the body a little bit.
What's that?
Deborah's also asking, could you or would you taper the body a little bit?
Yeah, if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly worry about it. I mean, this has a little bit of a taper to it, just a bit, but I don't think you need to worry about it. But you could, yeah, if you wanted to. Sure.
And Elvis is asking, can I use some flash for the tail?
You can use anything you want for the tail. I think the question is, would I use flash for the tail, right? You're asking my opinion. You can You could use Christmas tree tinsel for the tail if you wanted to, but would you want to? Yeah. If you wanted a flashier fly, you could absolutely put a little flash in the tail. I think this fly has enough flash. There's a little flash in the leg sparkles, and there's a little flash in the body, and a flash in the cone, of course. I think that's enough. But if you wanted more flash, yeah, you could put flash. You could combine marabou with flash, or just use all flash. Absolutely, yeah. Other questions?
That's it for right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Nope, the question's not relevant to this one, so let's.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn this on its side, and I just find it's easier to do that far side if I can see the top of the fly. In this case, the top is the other side, and I'm going to try to, align it midpoint in the body, the same way that I did the other side. And I need to refocus here. So now I've got the legs on the other side, and I'll show them to you. Can't see it, but oops, I dropped my background. I should have known not to get tricky. All right.
That's nice and close up.
Now you can see the legs on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question while we're here. David's asking, is there a big difference between the Select Marabou Packs versus the Woolly Bugger Marabou?
No, I don't think so. The Select is a little bit longer, but if you want the real fuzzy stuff, I found that the Woolly Bugger Marabou seems to be better. I like the Woolly Bugger Marabou better than the Select, but I honestly don't know the difference. The Select is just a bit longer if you're tying bigger flies. That's all I can tell. And then I'm going to take the other legs and just eyeball them to the middle of the tail. You can always retrim them if you want, but that's, I got those a little short, so I'm going to cut these a little shorter. It's not really, doesn't really have to be that exact. And basically, that is a GD Sculpin snack, except for the whip finish. And then drop a head cement. And I got all kinds of grief for not putting the head cement on to my last fly. So I'm going to put head cement on this fly so that people don't yell at me, because I don't like it when people yell at me. And I would hit that head pretty hard with the head cement. I'd give it a pretty good soaking in there. And I'd turn it over and hit the bottom side too, which I can't do here because I didn't adjust my vise properly. Oh, I can come in underneath. But I'd give it that bead isn't going to go, or that cone isn't going to go anywhere. But that just locks in those legs and the chenille so that your fly is going to stay together better. So that is the GD Sculpin snack. Let me back up here a bit so you can see the whole fly. There it is. And we'll do the rotation. The Tim Flagler spin. And there we go. So really basic fly, really simple, a lot of action in the water, sinks well, and is just, I think, a great early season streamer fly or even a winter streamer fly, especially if you fish it slowly. So that's my story. That's the GD Sculpt snack.
Got a lot of questions coming in.
Okay. All right.
Starting from
what size chenille? Medium.
Hold on 1 second. Let's start from the top. Here we go. Oh, someone asked, are you going to fill in the gap behind the cone?
Nah. No, you could. You could put a little dubbing on there, but I'm not going to bother.
Mark wants to know, does George tie it jig style?
I honestly don't know. And I just did a podcast with George on winter fishing, which will be coming out, I think, this week on Friday. But he might. The jig style hook is going to be quite a bit shorter shank. So it's going to give you a little bit different profile on the fly because the shank is so short on that. And plus, you can't get as much weight on the jig style because you can't put a cone on a jig style hook. So I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with this way, honestly.
Great. You're going to love the setup of this question. Ryan's asking, would it be a crime to add crystal flash to the body or maybe even crystal legs?
Yes, it would be a crime. And the flash police would come to your house and take you away. No, it wouldn't. If you want to flash your fly, then put some crystal flash on it.
And then we're at the question you just asked, which is Mark asked, what size chenille?
Oh, that's a medium size chenille. But it depends on the size you're tying, Mark. If you're tying a 12, you probably use small. If you're tying an 8 or a 6, then you might use large. But medium, that's the medium size chenille. Yeah.
Okay. Michael's asking, would you leave a leg a little longer on each side?
I wouldn't, but you might. You could. Yeah. I like them this length. I don't like them too long, but yeah, you could make them as long as the tail if you wanted to. These legs are supposed to kind of imitate the pectoral fins of a sculpin, which are quite broad and long, but they don't go beyond about halfway down the body. So I wouldn't make them any longer, and that's the way George ties it. And George has fished this fly a lot, and George has caught a lot of fish on it. So I'm not messing with George's pattern. You can mess with it if you want, but I have a lot of respect for George Daniel. I've fished with him, and I know what he can do to a trout stream. So you can go ahead and experiment all you want. I'm sticking with George's fly.
Bambi is asking, which knot would you use to fish this fly?
I would use the same knot I use in every other trout fly, a clinch knot, standard clinch. But you could tie it with a loop. You could put it on with a loop knot. It's going to give you more of a jigging action up and down. And I'm not so sure that a jigging action is always the best thing to do to a fly because sculpins and other bait fish don't swim like this. They swim like this. And even crayfish, when they swim, mostly swim, in a straight line. So, yeah, you could tie with a loop. You could put it on with a loop knot if you wanted to. Yep.
Bob's asking, could you dub it before you whip finish?
Yeah, that was basically the same question to cover up those wraps.
Right.
And yeah, you could if you wanted to make a little neater. You could put some dubbing on there. I wouldn't try to put another wrap of chenille on top of there. but you could dub a little brown fur, or even some red, to give it a hot spot. Some red dubbing at the head of this thing might be a pretty good idea. Yeah, I might try that actually.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but for those who weren't tuned in yet, Deborah's asking, whose turn is it next week between you and Flagler to choose the fly?
It was Tim's. Tim's
turn next week?
Yeah, and he chose that LaFontaine fly, and he's got a really special way of the body on this thing is an incredible pain to tie. And Flagler's got a special way of doing it, which is really clever, but I promised not to tie it his way after watching his video. I'm on my honor not to use his method, so I'm going to have to come up with a better way. So I'm already resigned to lose this week, next week.
And this is kind of a question that we've been answering, but it's an interesting question. So why do you leave the gap behind the cone and not fill it behind the cone in the body?
Because this is a fly that I want to tie a whole bunch of them, and I don't want to waste any more time, and I don't think it matters. It looks better. It would look better. God, maybe I should go dub a collar on there, huh? Should I go dub a collar on there? I'm going to dub a collar on there. Let's go back. That's bothering everybody. You're right. It looks terrible.
I think it looks pretty good, but
now we're going to dub a collar. So I'm going to start my thread again. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take some marabou. I'm going to take some fuzz from the marabou, like this. And I'm going to chop it up a little bit with my scissors. Am I on the right camera? Yeah. I'm going to chop it up a bit. And I'm going to roll it a little bit. And then I'm going to dub this marabou on the thread. And then I'm going to fill it in. Now are you happy, Deborah? Does it look better? Everybody happy now?
it does look nice.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
More questions. So could you use a UV resin if you wanted?
Only at the end. Yes, you could.
Mm-hmm.
You can't use UV resin where you're going to cover it up because the UV won't cure it completely. All right, there. You happy now? Everybody happy?
Okay. Both versions are tremendous.
Right.
He's asking if you can fish this on a Euro rod or if it's too heavy for that.
No, you can fish it on a Euro rod. You're going to plunk it just like every other Euro rig. So, yeah, you could fish it with a Euro rod, probably on 4X instead of your normal 5 or 6. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's how George fishes it often on a Euro rod. Yep.
Ken's asking if you could use a heavy tungsten bead.
Yep, you could.
Yep. Okay.
Then it wouldn't be the GD Sculpt Snack, but you could.
And would you ever use this for steelhead? And if so, what size would you fish?
I'd fish 6s, 8s, and 10s, depending on the river. Yeah, I've caught a lot of steelhead on woolly buggers and egg-sucking leeches, which is similar to this fly. And yeah, I'd absolutely fish this for steelhead. I think it'd be a good steelhead fly. It'd be a good smallmouth bass fly as well. Be a good panfish fly, crappie, and probably not bluegill, a little big for bluegill, but crappie, yellow perch, bigger sizes like 4s probably work for pike. Yeah. And it's basically, it's very similar to a woolly bugger. So, and woolly bugger will catch nearly anything. I think it'd be a good carp fly in smaller sizes in 10s and 12s. Yep. Yep.
I think I know the answer to this question, but Mark's asking, would you ever want to see all the flies that we tie as we tie along?
Yeah, that would be cool.
We'd love that.
Why don't you, what would the best way to do it?
I would say
post them to,
in the comments.
Put them on it. Well, can they put pictures in the comments?
Yeah, they can absolutely put pictures in the comments. And I think that'd be a good way to connect it back to whatever we're tying. So that are going back in the archives to tie it, they can see examples of participants.
Another way would be to put a picture on Instagram and then tag Orvis Fly Fishing.
That's true.
Yep. So you could do that too. But that would be cool. I would really love to see some of the flies that you guys have tied. That's a great idea, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great idea.
Just hashtag it Orvis Fly Fishing if it's on Instagram. Or I mean, if you're whichever thread you're in, even put that post in there. That'd be great.
Yeah. Ice dub at the front. Good idea, Deborah. Good idea.
All right. Larry's asking if you're going to fish this as a sculpin or crawfish. Will this fish hook side up to avoid snags?
Yeah, it'll fish hook side up. Any weighted fly is going to fish hook side up. So, yep.
Okay.
I think.
Ed's asking, have you ever tried a balanced leech style that would give it less of a jigging motion?
No, but that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, a balanced leech style might be very effective in this fly. Absolutely. I wonder if you could tie a balanced cone. You'd have to put the pin further out on it instead of a bead. Put a cone on that. It might be interesting. Yeah, you'd have to work out the balance. You'd have to experiment with it a little bit. If you weren't using a bead, if you're using a cone instead. You'd have to have a pin big enough to keep that cone on, but that could be very interesting. Yeah, good idea.
After Mike said, I'll call that the Rosenbauer collar, which I think is a good name.
Well, it's better than the Kardashian butt on my dry flies. Can we see it without the dub again? No, you cannot see it. Actually, I have another one.
Oh, no.
I have the other one. Where'd it go? I can't find it. I had another one. Oh, here it is.
Okay.
All right.
So, my colleagues are telling me you can't post with a photo in the comments, so I apologize.
Okay.
So post it to our page and tag Tom and always hashtag Orvis Fly Fishing.
With collar. Don't tag me because I don't look at my Instagram every day. Tag Orvis Fly Fishing.
Yes.
There's without the collar. So Deborah's right. It looks better with the collar.
Yep.
It looks much better. All right. Who's going to tell George that we improved his fly? Who's going to tell George?
Whoa. All right. We've got a lot of opinions coming in here. Or questions too.
Okay.
So, if you dead drift this, would you use a second fly?
Yeah, you could. You could hang a little nymph off it. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ed's asking, what about using Zonker strips for the tail?
Sure. Anything is wiggly. Yeah. You could tie in a big bunch of ostrich herl too, which makes a really good tail on a woolly. I sometimes tie my woolly buggers with ostrich herl tails. The thing is, you have to use a lot of ostrich herl to get enough bulk, but it looks pretty cool. It's not very durable either, but it looks pretty cool. So yeah, you could use a Zonker strip. Yep, that would be neat.
Or Dan said, so it's essentially a souped up woolly bugger, which is not wrong.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. But a woolly bugger is only a souped up woolly worm, so which is hundreds. The woolly worm is hundreds of years old. So,
all right.
What weight rod would I fish this on? I would fish this on a 5 or a 6 or a 7. It's got a lot of weight to it. You could fish it with a 4, but you'd have to kind of lob it. Or a Euro rod where weight, where you want some weight to get the fly out there. So wouldn't be so bad. Where'd you go, Julia?
Oh, I was just, letting you answer questions.
Oh, no, they want you in. They want you in here. Don't you guys want Julia in here? I do.
All right. Oh, Larry is sarcastically asking, will it fish better with the collar? Let's not tell George Daniel either way.
I don't know. I got to try it and see.
Everybody go test it and then come back and we'll have a whole consensus.
Can you downsize this fly? Of course you can. You could tie it as small as a 14. Do it on Zoom. No, we're not doing it on Zoom. Oh, the picture. No, we're not going to do it on Zoom. We're very happy with the platform we're using.
Steve's throwing a hackle on it.
Oh, so it's even more like a woolly bugger. Let's see. What other questions do we have here? Did I get them all?
I think so, at least related to this.
There are many flies that are a souped up woolly bugger. Many flies that are a souped up woolly bugger.
I think that's it.
That's it, huh?
You did essentially, the fly and then an extra fly extra edition.
Yeah. Well, I got so many people telling me it looked terrible.
I know. It's like the Victorian version.
All right, I had to add it. To there. Yeah, I don't want to disappoint all these people.
No,
they're here for entertainment. If they don't like the fly, I gotta fix it.
No.
But yeah, it's a great fly, and it's very versatile. You can use it all season long, and in all kinds of water. So tie some up and experiment. Put a little flash in them. Experiment with your own colors. Put a rabbit strip on it. Yeah, go ahead and be creative with your fly patterns. What I typically do is I'll start with the fly exactly how the originator tied it, and I'll fish it. And then I'll say, yeah, I think I'll try adding a Zonker strip, or I'll try adding a little flash, and then see how that works. Of course, you go out in a different day and conditions are different. But then I'll start playing around with the pattern, different colors. And I actually did some variations of this fly when I was practicing it. So, be creative, but try it first as the originator designed it. And then once you've done that, then tie some variations, different colors and stuff. That's my recommendation anyway.
Tom, we've got a really important question.
Okay.
The furled leader with it.
Yeah, why not? Sure. Yeah. Use any leader with it.
All right. I think that's it.
All right.
Asking where you can find this video after the Facebook Live is over. They're all kept under our on the Orvis Fly Fishing Facebook under video archives. You can find everything.
Yep. If you just go onto the Facebook page and look, it'll be there. And these are also usually put onto the Orvis Guide to Fly Fishing YouTube page a few days after we put them here. So, and pretty soon they're going to be on the Learning Center. Pretty soon we're going to archive them all on the Learning Center. So if you don't like Facebook, and we're hoping to be able to actually broadcast live from the Orvis Learning Center, as well as Facebook and YouTube. So, yeah, we're doing some new stuff. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for your great questions, and I love it when you tease me. So keep it up. Keep it up. Hang in there, and we can't wait to see some of the flies that you tied. But they have to be tied during the session. Okay, you can't tie one afterwards. You can't do after class work and then hand it in. It has to be a fly that you tied during the session. Okay.
And we'd love to hear how they perform on the water too.
Yeah. Send us pictures of fish.
Tag.
Send us lots of grip and grin shots with your fingers in the gills and holding fish out of the water for 10 minutes. Send us all those. Send us all those pictures.
That's sarcasm, folks.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you tying along with us, and we will see you next week when I'm going to get my butt kicked by Tim Flagler. I know it. I'm not even going to try because he's going to whip my butt.
Hey, Tom, that's not the spirit.
Oh, I know, but he's going to get me. He's going to get me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.